Welcome to the Therapists Talk Money podcast, the place for therapists and key figures in our profession to talk openly and think analytically about money. Hello everybody, this is an update for CTUK members and other therapists in the UK with Marvis Stewart and Maria Albertson, who got a successful proposal through in 2022 at the BACP AGM. I will read out that resolution so you know what we're talking about. We ask BACP to take a firm stance against counsellor exploitation and communicate with organisations advertising such jobs to make them aware of the importance of paying qualified therapists a decent, proportionate wage. You're just asking the BACP to take a firm stance against counsellor exploitation, 1, and communicate with organisations advertising such jobs to make them aware of the importance of paying qualified therapists a decent, proportionate wage. That's it, right?
Yes.
Great. So, Marvis, you proposed this. Tell us a little bit why this was important to you.
Yes, thank you, Claire. This is the second time that I proposed, that I submitted that resolution. I had also submitted that resolution, a very similar resolution in 2021. It was approved, but at that time it did not pass. So I decided to wait. I remained a BACP member, thinking that I could resubmit again. And by that time, and the reasons why I resubmitted is because the issue of counsellor exploitation, specifically qualified counsellors that are asked to work essentially for free in many organizational settings because of the accreditation loop or invitations of wanting to become more experienced, so volunteer to gain more hours, more experience. Really was very concerning, and it's still very concerning to me. Here we are, qualified, ready to work with experience, and we are being asked to work for free to fund our professional practice, our insurances, our membership bodies, fees, our personal therapy, if we have it, if we choose to have it. We are being asked to fund our professional practice while working for free, while being asked to work for free. This is not okay, and it's never been okay, but specifically now with the cost of living crisis that we're going through, that we're experiencing, it's definitely not okay. And the motivation to resubmit this resolution was based on the landscape that we are, what's going on at this very moment. This is not something new for me. I've been aware of this issue for a long time, from the moment that I was training and figuring out how I was going to work after qualification. And the more I was training and after I became qualified, it became even more clear how difficult it is for qualified counselors to gain employment, to have contracts. Many of us, I don't want to say most of us, many of us work as self-employed because it is very, very difficult to find jobs that support us financially without having a partner or someone else within the family household to help financially with the cost.
Thanks for that, Marvis. Maria, why did you second this proposal?
Well, as you know, I've been working with CTUK for about 6 years now to challenge unpaid work in our profession, and the resolution that Marvis proposed really kind of just aligned perfectly with our aims as an organisation, so it made complete sense to back it, really. What I liked about it is it's very clear, the resolution. I will put a link to it below this video as well so people can read the full resolution. And what it does is it challenges unpaid work in the profession, but it asks BACP to take some accountability for that and to challenge organisations on behalf of their members and to keep their members updated with their work, which I think is really important. And also to touch on what Martha said about what I think is a myth about accreditation being this kind of gold standard and producing these therapists which are better than anybody else. It challenges that myth, because what we see and what everyone is aware of now is that a lot of employers will use accreditation as an excuse to ask therapists to work for free. And a lot of the ads that we see will say, come and work for us to get your hours for accreditation, but this is a voluntary role while you're doing that. And it makes no sense at all, because when people are training, they work with really vulnerable clients in the most kind of complex of settings all across the country, and they're good enough to do it then, so they're good enough to do it once they're qualified, but to be paid for doing that work. And I know I talk about this a lot because it makes us really angry, and it makes us angry that a lot of people are not talking about it, but it's therapists' use of food banks, and I will get that into this video as well, because it's important. What we know is that there are only, I think it's just over 60,000 therapists in the UK at the moment, but I think it is quite a high percentage of therapists that are using food banks. So it is 3% qualified, 4% trainees, but that equates to 1,800 qualified and 2,400 trainees are actually using food banks at the moment.
Say those numbers really clearly for me, please, because I'm finding it hard to take the numbers in. There are
just
many
over
therapists?
Just over 60,000 therapists in the UK, and there is 3% of qualified therapists and 4% of trainee therapists who are using food banks. And in real numbers, what that means is that there is 1,800 qualified and 2,400 trainees who are having to access food banks because they can't afford to eat. And that is just the people that we're aware of. It could be higher than that.
Those were the people that responded.
Yeah, so that was the 2021 financial survey of the counselling and psychotherapy profession, which was commissioned by CTUK to Dr. Elizabeth Cotton from Survive and Work. And I can pop a link to that under this video as well.
She's at Cardiff University?
Yeah, that's right. So Cardiff University. Yeah. But I find those numbers quite shocking.
Yes.
It's, and we've been putting this out there for a long time now, because it's not just about saying this is unpaid, we want paid work, we do want paid work, but it's about the reality of what's behind therapists not being paid and how this lack of payment is affecting people's lives, and it's affecting people's lives in the most kind of fundamental of ways, that they can't afford to live. They cannot. If you can't eat, you can't live. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
So one of the cultures that we have in therapy is that when you're a student, you're out in the deep end. Good luck to you. You've got lots of support. But if you can't make it, then you can't make it. When you're qualified, you enter a different bracket of one of us, essentially. You're in the gang now. That qualified therapists should be still using food banks. It's terrible that anyone at all should be using food banks. It's terrible that student therapists should be using food banks. But when we get to the stage of qualified therapists using food banks, and the culture in therapy for unpaid work, particularly around, come and work for us unpaid to become accredited, there's something really out of balance there. Anyway, this resolution passed. It got 5% of BACP members to vote in favour of it. So congratulations.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So what happened next was this resolution was passed in November 2022 at the BACP AGM, and Marvis and I were aware of this at the time because the AGM was online, we attended online, and we thought after the AGM that there would be a process in place where we would be contacted by BACP to give us a kind of update or some information about what their procedures were for implementing resolutions that had been upheld. And we didn't hear anything back from them until we sent them an email in February 2023 this year,
Wow.
So like 3 months later, we wrote to BACP. Well, Martha's put the letter together. Wrote to BACP just to ask them quite simply what was happening with the resolution, if they could give us an update. And then we got a response back from BACP on the 17th of February this year, saying that the Board of Governors and the governance team had a meeting at their January meeting, I think it was on January the 27th, to discuss how they would implement the resolution, and that we would hear very soon from them. So we then contacted them on the 21st of March to say that we hadn't had a response after their meeting on the 27th. They then contacted us on the 22nd of March, apologised for the delay in that, said we'd have a letter very soon. By the 27th of March, there was still no letter from them. And then we finally got the letter on, because we sent a follow-up on the 27th of March asking for the letter. And then on the 29th of March, the letter arrived then. And so that was the initial process after the resolution.
What did the letter say?
So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Martha? So I think you might have the letter in front of you. Do you?
Yes, I do. Let me find it. It's right. Yes.
Was it just saying, we acknowledge receipt of your...
So what has, Maria is correct in that there was quite a bit of back and forth between the 17th of February and the 29th of March, which is the date that we received a formal letter from the BACP chair. There was a lot of confusion as to why a simple email, or what I thought would be a simple email asking BACP to just clarify what were their protocols or guidance around how they would implement the resolution, felt very confusing as to what I thought I had the idea that BACP would have already some sort of policy or guidance or protocol as to how they implement resolutions. And so what happened is that we got this letter from the chair on the 29th of March, which was basically a 2-page letter, not actually responding to our request or not actually answering the question that we were asking, but pretty much telling us the things that we already know and they have already stated in public about unpaid work and how important it is for BACP to acknowledge that, yes, qualified counselors, of course, need to get paid for their work, but there was nowhere within the letter a specific time frame or timeline or information as to how they are going to implement the resolution.
Right.
And so it was very confusing to receive a letter was very lengthy, but with no answer. And then I replied later, acknowledging the receipt of this letter and asking for some clarifications around some of the statements that they had made, some of the things that they have already said, again, like I said, in public, but I still remain with no answer around when this resolution will be implemented. So that happened at the beginning of May. I wrote to the chair, and it was only on the 25th of May when there was an acknowledgement that that letter was received. And it was not a letter, it was an email, basically. It was an email just basically saying, we acknowledge that we received your letter. We will let you know in due course what are the steps, what we are doing. I'm paraphrasing. Sure. And so I replied saying, oh, thank you. And what I need from you is a timeline as to how you are going to proceed to implement this resolution in the way that members passed it. So in the way that we asked, that I wrote and Maria seconded, on how to pass the resolution, which is basically make organizations aware that counselors have financial needs. And if you have funding, if you have the budget, make sure to include counselors within that budget. So that's basically what the resolution is asking.
And it's explicitly not demanding or even requesting that agencies pay qualified therapists. It's saying, I'll just go back and I'll reread it because I think this is quite important. People run ahead. We ask BACP to take a firm stance against counsellor exploitation and communicate with organisations advertising such jobs to make them aware of the importance of paying qualified therapists a decent proportionate wage. That's it. It's not, it's just reminding people.
Dictating is not mandating, is basically BACP, you as the biggest organization, membership body that there is for counselors and psychotherapists with the influence and power that you have. Can you please make all organizations that are asking qualified counselors to come in ready to work, so with their DBS, their professional liability insurance, with their clinical supervision arrangements already in place, when you're asking a qualified counselor to come and work for you for free, that actually they are people too, that they also need to work, that they also need to pay for their bills, and make them aware that please make sure that you include them in the budget. And so it was very confusing that we're almost we're almost 7 months into that resolution being passed, and I have not received any information around what is happening, what will happen, when it will happen. And 7 months is a long time when so much time was given to campaign, to make BACP members, CTUK members aware of what the resolution wanted. So many people agreeing with it. It did pass, so that means that the membership wants this to happen, and it hasn't happened yet.
And have either of you been approached by BACP formally or informally to just tease out and explore your thoughts on how they might proceed on this?
In the letter that I received, BACP, the chair had asked me to possibly they basically said, we are keen to involve you or consult with you as part of the process.
That's great.
I think in a way, I understand what they mean by wanting to involve me in the process, but I also feel very strongly that the resolution is very clear as to what we would like them to do. We are asking them to do. The resolution, which was not completely shared in full to the members at the time, basically gives BACP a guidance as to we're asking you to please set up a task force or a group in which they would be absolutely focused on highlighting organizations that it only takes a moment to go online, to go on Indeed, to go on any of the job websites, or even on Twitter, where you can see organizations asking people to volunteer for free.
Sure.
So this is where I feel very personal about this and very strongly about this. I do not feel it's my job to consult or work with them when I've already, the resolution is very clear as to what it is needed, and they have more resources, many more resources to put into it. And I feel like I don't actually even have the time to give any free labor at this time. The resolution is asking for counselors to be paid, and they're asking me, we want to consult with you.
So it's great that they want to consult with you. That's a real positive. But have they consulted with you?
I don't believe so. That we've had the communications that we've explained, that I've explained. It's what's happened.
Wow. Okay.
I think for me, the thing about this resolution is that I don't personally feel that we are asking BACP to do anything that they should not be already doing anyway. They've already publicly stated that they think all counsellors should be paid for their work. I think if you go on the CTUK Twitter handle, there's a pinned post there of a tweet where they've said they agree that counsellors should be paid for their work. They've said that in various of their communications, and I believe them. I take them at their word that they believe that. So if they do, then this should be something very easy for them to implement. It's not, we're not asking for something difficult or even for a massive project to happen. It is simply, like we've said, to, campaign to make organisations aware of the kind of pitfalls, if you like, of not paying people, of not paying qualified counsellors, and to pay them when you can.
Because this is an EDI thing. This is a really straightforward EDI thing.
It is, and we are not saying that we are against volunteering or that we want charities to close or that we don't think people should be able to make that choice to volunteer. It's not about that at all. Neither myself or CTUK or Marvis or anyone is against people being able to choose for work. It's against the exploitation side of it. And also, thinking, if you come from it from thinking that, everyone has the best intentions for therapists and for clients, to make people aware of things and organisations aware of things that they might not even be aware of. It might be that they just need that bit of education around, what is exploitative and, what is good practice, and examples of charities that do fundraise really well and pay all of their counsellors because they exist.
Right, they exist. This isn't something coming out of the blue. Okay. So the resolution passed. There's been some backwards and forwards about communication. BACP members have now been sent out an email saying that the next round of resolutions and motions has begun. Where does that leave your resolution?
It's very confusing to see BACP start this process again. And I'm wondering what happened to the resolution that was passed last year. And it was the only resolution that had passed for a while because of the changes within the voting and percentages that they wanted from the membership.
It went from 1% of the membership, and then it changed. Was it 1%? And then it went to 5% of the membership had to vote in favour?
Changed the whole process, yeah. When the first resolution that passed, Claire, about taking the voluntary ads out of the Therapy Today, that was needed to be proposed by 2 people and have 25 people sign the letter, a minimum of 25 people, for it to go through to vote. And then they changed it after that to needing 5% of the membership vote. And that is a few thousand people, isn't it, to go? I don't know the exact figures, but it goes into the thousands anyway.
Yes. I also want to mention how hard it is to campaign for these things. I am just one person that is aligned with CTUK values. That's why I asked Maria to support me with that. And it takes a lot of time, hours and hours and hours of work to be able to make people aware online through different various methods about resolutions and motions. And it feels very, very strange to ask members again to go through that process, how much time it takes, how long it takes, when the members that voted for the resolution last year, there is no evidence. There isn't at the moment any proof that anything is happening with that. So how can you ask for this again when you haven't implemented and followed through on your legal requirement from the resolution of last year?
It's a legal requirement, is it?
Yeah. So resolutions are legally binding. They are required to implement it if their members vote for it.
So I'm surprised to hear that it's a legal requirement. That's kind of sobering. And the thing that really strikes me is that there are you two individuals, and then there's the BACP. And I know the BACP has had a lot to do with ScopeEd and many, many other things. But if it's a legal requirement, okay, that kind of puts a different tinge on this. It's something to think about, something for us all to think about. Okay.
And that's why it's so confusing to not see any action or any movement the moment that it passed, because I knew, because of the process, that it is a legally binding process and it is a legal requirement if a resolution passed. when I sent that email in February, I was expecting to receive a clear, to the point response around timelines and protocols. And here we are now, 7 months later, and we have no clear answers as to how they will implement it. That is, 7 months is a long time to be waiting for something that needs to be legally implemented.
Well, maybe as BACP members, we need to remain optimistic and upbeat and hopeful and understand that there's a process going on here. Not to be put off putting in resolutions and motions this time round. And to really keep an eye out, not so much to hold anyone to account, but so that we are involved in our own membership body. Is there anything that hasn't been said?
I want to say that you are right. It is a process. So we're waiting, we're working through that process. I do want to believe that BACP they're going to implement this resolution, because what would it mean if they don't? What would it mean if they don't implement this resolution? What message does that send out?
I'm 100% absolutely certain that they will do it. I have to be. There's no other choice. Well, thanks. That's kind of eye-opening. Thank you very much. Let's see what CTUK members have to say about it.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Therapists Talk Money podcast. You can find all of our podcasts on the Counsellors Together UK website, www.ukcounsellors.co.uk, as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Google Podcasts.